Okay, today we're going to be talking about finding the area of trapezoids. First thing to remember, trapezoids are special because they have only one set of parallel lines. And these two parallel lines are the ones that I'm drawing arrows on. Something to help you out with trapezoids is that the parallel lines are always your bases of the trapezoids. So the bases are always the lines that are parallel to each other. Now, if you can remember that, it will help you identify the difference between your bases of the trapezoid and your height of the trapezoid. Okay, and again, what makes a trapezoid is that it has only that one set of parallel lines, and it kind of traps the other lines in. Okay, so of course all of these are going to be trapezoids. The formula for area of a trapezoid is area is equal to half of my base 1 plus my base 2 times my height. And the reason we have base 1 and base 2 is you'll notice again the bases are the lines that are parallel to each other on a trapezoid, and we have two of those bases. So we'll end up having to add those together. Okay, so for this trapezoid, what do we want to call base 1 manual? Remember, your bases are the two that are parallel to each other. Which one do you want to call base 1? Okay, cool. Manuel wants to do base 1 is the 12 yards. Do you guys think it matters which one is base 1 and base 2? Okay, I heard mixed answers, and that's okay, but what are we going to end up doing with them? Adding them. And does order matter when we add? No. So that's why it does not matter which one we call base 1 and which one we call base 2. So base 1, Manuel said, was going to be 12 yards. So that means that base 2 is my 18 yards. Remember that your height is always straight up and down. It's never going to be a slanted side. So straight up and down here, my height of this trapezoid is 8 yards. Now when we actually solve for the area of trapezoids, we have to be very careful with what order we do these things in. Recall PEMDAS. When we talked about order of operations in PEMDAS, we talked about the parentheses always coming first. Well, I see parentheses here. So we are always going to add the bases first, add our bases, then multiply the height, then finally we divide by 2. Okay, so we'll add our bases together. Then we'll multiply that by the height, and then we'll divide that by 2, and that will give us the area of our trapezoid. Okay, now in the substitution, I do want you to write the formula again. The more we write the formula, the more familiar and comfortable we'll be with it. So the area equals 1/2 of the base 1 plus the base 2 times the height. And we're going to fill in the things that we know. Remember that you should always write your formula first, then substitute in what you know. That will make sure that you do all the steps and don't leave anything out. So I have my 1/2. We said base 1 was 12, plus my base 2, which we said was 18, times my height, which is 8. So based on the order of operations that we talked about, Christian, what are we going to do first? Based on the order of operations, what are we going to do first? We're going to add the bases. We're going to do what's in parentheses. So 12 plus 18 is going to give me 30 for the total of my bases, I'm still going to have to multiply that by 8 and then divide it by 2. So my next step then, after I add my bases, is to multiply my base total times my height. Let's do some quick mental math here. What's 3 times 8? 24, add my 0. So 30 times 8 is 240. Now we still need to figure out what half of that is, and remember, figuring out half of something, we could multiply the fractions, or we can just say, okay, what's half of 240, and we divide that by 2. Well, what's half of 24? 12, add the 0. Some mental math for you. Or we can work it out to the side. Either way, it's the same. So again, our area then is 120 yards squared. Remember, our units are squared for area because we multiplied 2 yards amounts. Okay, we're going to skip to the third one now. Okay, this one says, what is the missing measurement? Okay, so we were given the area equals 24 miles squared. And I see a few other things that I was given here. Mendiola, what 2 sides of that trapezoid are parallel to each other? Just give me the measurements that are on them. Which 2 sides of my trapezoid are parallel to each other? The top and the bottom, the 5 miles and the 7 miles. And remember, if you know which 2 sides are parallel to each other, then you know which bases to use, or what to use as your base. So our formula again was area equals half of base 1 plus base 2 times my height. Okay, now what do we want to call base 1, Aiden? Okay, so we're going to call the 7 miles base 1. If 7 miles is base 1, then Emily, what would base 2 be? Yep, the 5 miles. So base 1 was 7 miles, base 2 was 5 miles. Do we know the height for this trapezoid? No, we don't. That's what these question marks are. Now, don't let this notation confuse you. This little side triangle is only to show you that this dotted line here makes a perpendicular situation with this base. That's to show you that this would represent the height. They could actually tell you that this line over here is the height, but you need to get used to seeing it both ways. So we don't know the height, but I'm going to add in that we know the area is 24 miles squared. Now I'm going to skip over the order of operations box on this one just because we're going to have to work backwards to find that missing height. But let's go ahead and write the formula again and substitute in what we know. So the area is equal to half of base 1 plus the second base times the height. And we know the area because we were given the area equals 24 miles. So I'm going to write in 24 for A. And then I have my 1/2 still. My base 1 was 7. My base 2 was 5. And my height, I don't know, so I'm just going to leave it as H, an unknown variable. What do you think is the first thing we should do to start to solve this, Madison? Add my bases. We're still going to get rid of our parentheses first. Exactly. So 7 plus 5 gives me 12. I still have my h for my unknown height, still have my 1/2, and that's all still equal to 24. If you want to make sure you don't leave any steps out, you need to be solving and bringing everything down along the way. What do you think we should do next, Gracie? Remember, my whole point is to try to get the h by itself. So what else can I do on this side of the equal sign to help me out? Divide 12 by 2. In other words, figure out what half of 12 is. Half of 12 is 6, so I have 6h is equal to my 24. This looks more like something I should know how to solve now. And that 6 is being multiplied with my height. So what's the inverse operation of multiplication, Ty? Division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 6. And my height would equal what then? 24 divided by 6, Sarah? Would be 4 miles. And remember, that is not squared because it's not the area, that's just the height. Okay, go ahead and do the other two on your own, and then we will check them when you come back to class next week.